issues, but they're not insurmountable issues. For example, in Hungary, again, part of the Ottoman Empire for centuries and centuries. Then comes World War I, World War II. The Jews are taken out, kicked out. Many go to concentration camps. So all their property is confiscated. Then everybody's property is confiscated by the communists. After World War II, all the property of the Germans is confiscated. 2 million Germans are set off to wander Europe after World War II. My point is, when all this ended, when communism fell, you had property titles that the communist people said they owned them, the Jewish people said they owned them, and Germans said they owned them. So you had overlapping property titles, and they could have had war forever, people saying, that's my house, that's my house. Instead, basically the government solved the whole thing. What did they do? They hired a title company. That's what Stewart Title does. You buy a new house, you hire a title company, and they go in and try and sort out the history of the property ownership of the land. And then the government said, look, if you had part ownership of this property, we'll give you a coupon. For that, you can get a share of a company or one thing or another. Basically, they bought everybody out. They allowed people some sort of justice to get compensation for their property. It's like when we build a highway, we take people's property by force. But you're obligated by the Constitution to give them just compensation. Okay, so I'm not saying that it's an easy answer to the West Bank, but allowing people to buy and sell property and trying to solve these things, prosperity helps solve these problems. People say, this is my property and I want it back. And you say, well, okay, how about $50,000? Can I buy your title for $50,000? And some people will say yes, right? Particularly people that are earning $1 a day. So there are ways to sort this out. There's no easy answers, but the point is right now you've got a problem of welfare that people aren't earning their money. The money's coming from international aid agencies. You've got $400 million coming in 2010 from people who've left, letting people leave to go out and go someplace else. We've got areas all across the United States that are just as desolate as the West Bank, right? There's places people could go if they were allowed to. Yeah.
When it says the assistance, is it talking about all assistance or just humanitarian assistance? It says top 10 donors of humanitarian. Oh, it does.
This is humanitarian here, yeah. So this is just money that goes. And again, the people are displaced, they're in conflict zones and so forth. Now, again, one narrative is the West Bank is a mess because Israel is doing all the stuff, preventing them from doing this and that. Well, another reason the Palestinian territories are a mess is because incredibly corrupt government, right? 6 months, 41 different corruption cases, embezzlement, money laundering, fraud, exploitation of positions. Basically, you've got a large government in the Palestinian territories. You've got Hamas and thugs in charge, and it's almost as bad as New Orleans, right? Incredible corruption where the money. So I don't tell that joke when I'm in Louisiana, but again, corrupt government can be corrupt, and so the story is if you're in the West Bank or Gaza and you start a business and it begins to make money and you're successful, pretty soon somebody from the Palestinian Authority comes by and says, hey, what are you doing? How are you being so successful? Do you have a permit for that? Or my brother is interested in this and maybe he could be a partner. So in other words, there's a kind of corruption that fastens itself on these businesses and it's very hard for people to prosper. Now, no easy solution to that, but one of the reasons for this incredible fanaticism against Israel is partly the incredible prosperity that people, or the incredible poverty that people still live in decade after decade. They blame Israel or blame the West, but blaming their own government. And some people have stood up and said, Hamas is a bunch of thugs, and they get stabbed, they die. So it's really tough fighting these leaders. So here's from the Wall Street Journal a few days ago, 15,000 fleeing North Gaza, and my question is, how on earth in 2014 do you have people with a donkey and not even a well-fed donkey? And that's all they've got is a donkey and a cart to move. It's incredible poverty. And there's no simple explanation for that, I would argue. So the question is, what's the deal with the donkey? Why are they using that now? Is it just travel and trade restrictions, Islamic repression, colonial power? And again, I'm going to argue it's a lack of economic freedom and the misunderstanding these issues. Yeah.
Okay, so what prosperity would look like in the Middle East would be essentially what we have in the United States, where, for instance, more like tribal Africa. So they've been in their tribal state for so long, so if we truly had prosperity in the Middle East, it would look more like the United States and less like more of the tribal systems we have.
Yeah, Turkey. Turkey is a success story in the Middle East. Even though there's still plenty of corruption, significant amount of poverty, Turkey chose a different economic system in the 1970s and transformed itself into a much more prosperous country. And those same policies, if they were put in place in Egypt, would lead to prosperity in a similar fashion. Yeah.
So do you think the prosperity of like North America, the U.S., is directly linked to the way their economic system functions?
Yeah. And again, there's more to this story. Obviously, I've got a limited amount of time, but
One more. Do you think also how modern we are, more like, building civilization as compared to riding a donkey? Do you think that's also directly related to the economic system?
Yeah. I mean, it's the legal system that allows you to own your property and start a business. I'm going to come to the Arab Spring story. I'm going to argue the whole story of Arab Spring is not one of people wanting to vote. It's one of people wanting economic freedom, of everyday merchants wanting the right to own, the cart that they sell their product in, to get a permit to sell their product, getting title to their house. These sort of basic economic freedoms exist in some countries, in Dubai, in Turkey. They don't exist in Egypt. So the difference between Egypt and Turkey, and some of my posts are about this, same population, pretty much same demographics. They're obviously different cultural people, but they're still Islamic and similar. And Turkey has had this incredible prosperity compared to the rest of the Middle East. What's next? So there's a website, Poverty Cure, an organization, a network of a number of Christian organizations. They have a povertyinc.org and povertycure.org, and I'm going to play a video, like a first few minutes of a video that they've done. And the focus on the video is more on Africa and India, but it's a development issue. But the same story applies in the Palestinian territories, in Egypt, in Syria, in Jordan, which is that you need the freedom of people to start enterprises. Small and medium enterprises, a small company that's just making stuff. And that process, we tend to take for granted, but it doesn't happen in other countries. Your debate club. You suppose they have debate clubs in Egypt? Well, it's tricky. There is the International Debate Association, but any kind of non-government organization, the permitting process, the regulations are complicated. We have this battle here with Uber. Right? Uber is a system where anybody with a car can sign up and give people rides for money. So for poor people, that would be a reasonable way to make money. Instead, we have taxi companies, bus unions, city councils all across the country trying to stop Uber and Sidecar, which are basically simple companies that allow people to turn their car into an asset earning income. Same story in India, where your little cart, the little wheeled bicycle cart to give people rides, there's like 200,000 of those in New Delhi that are illegal because the government doesn't give them a permit. So the police pull them over and try and run them out of business. These simple entrepreneurial things allow people to make money over time, create prosperity, develop skills, and those are allowed here. They're not allowed in most of the Middle East. Yeah.
You talked about how classic liberalism would be economic freedom. Do you think that American liberalism is now turning more towards like economic repression or economic, what I'm looking for?
Well, it's sort of a regulatory state. Say, look, yeah, you can go ahead and run your enterprise as long as you do it right, as long as you don't discriminate when you hire people, as long as you treat people okay, as long as you've got men's and women's bathrooms in your place and have 2 weeks paid vacation and have child care and health care, and pretty soon you've got this whole array of regulations that government says, well, yeah, you can have your business as long as you play by the rules.
Free as long as you follow what we tell you to do.
Yeah, and it's for the good of people. And so part of the, one huge example is child labor. Is child labor okay? Should kids 12, 13, 14 be able to work and earn money? Absolutely not. You know, they go nuts. Now, if you live on a farm, you can have the kids feed the chickens and get pecked and all the sorts of things happen. But in terms of working for money, that's not allowed with child. Child labor is huge reform for the Middle East. 50% of the people in the Kurdish territories are under 20. 50% in Egypt are under 25. The demographic, and they're impoverished. And we're saying the kids can't work? You know, International Labor Organization goes nuts. If you tried to start a company in one of these countries and hire people 10, 12, 13 in a refugee camp, you'd have, you know, CNN, ABC News at your front door in one day. Have you got this 12-year-old kid working 8 hours a day? Well, what are the options? You know, sitting in a refugee camp doing nothing? Yeah.
So it's your stance that we should be doing more to allow younger children to be employed. So at the same time, should it be the goal of the U.S. policy to find a balance between allowing people to work while at the same time compensating them justly for such work? In this country, encouraging job growth, while at the same time making sure that we're protecting those who have jobs and not exploiting them. Like, for example, paying children 10 cents to work 8 hours a day.
Yeah, it's a real problem, exploitation. The U.S. and international groups stopped child labor in Bangladesh. That effort put tens of thousands of minors out of work. And what did they do? Some went into prostitution, some died, because the country was so poor that without a source of income, the family couldn't survive. They couldn't survive. They did worse work. So ideally, in a refugee camp in Jordan, there would be 50, 80, 100 separate companies that kids could work for if they wanted to, that would be supervised so people weren't being exploited, and people could leave if they wanted. They'd get their parents' permission. They'd be transparent. You wouldn't allow them to work in dangerous machinery and one thing and another. But again, you're talking about a place where kids are systematically exploited now by their parents. Right? So allowing them to work and earn income. And again, I just mentioned this as an example. I mean, the main focus should be adults being able to work and so forth. But when you block kids from working in a poor area, whether it's inner city Detroit or Egypt, you're not allowing an avenue out of wealth. You're saying, well, they could join the debate club, but they can't work. Well, yeah, but if you were homeless, maybe you'd still be on the debate team, but probably you'd try and get a job, and so you'd get some money. Yeah.
I was just going to say, do you think that, isn't allowing them, even if they are exploited, isn't allowing them to be exploited better than letting them starve? Because aren't they just going to die if they're exploited?
Yeah, I mean, if that's the choice, but yeah, you're right. But exploiting, you know, what do we mean by exploiting? And so, when is labor voluntary? My point is, we have systems that say no child should work. And whether the definition is 18, 16, or some age, that comes basically from unions, the International Labor Organization, that fears there aren't enough jobs. So the International Labor Organization right now is criticizing refugee camps in Jordan.